A memory flashback is shown 8 years ago where there are signs on the gate with the words "Dunce idiot dumb girl incompetent family." A young Wendy is seen upset while a young Art watches over her. She asks Art if he could go and punish the meanies. But Art tells her that they shouldn't as she would regret trying to go against. As young Miss was a nice person, he said with a smile. But hearing those words made Wendy angry as she wondered why he didn't save her. She thinks about how she was the only one who was suffering, which was unacceptable to her. Wendy asks Art with a smug look on her face where he was this entire time and if he had quit being her butler. But fear and shock made it hard for Art to reply to her. Seeing this angers Wendy as she turns and tells Art to leave with her. But Art tells her to wait. She asks if she was Wendy Roberto. But Wendy asked Art who she was. Art didn't reveal who she was but instead told her that the rumors of her evil treatment were true. Wendy wonders who this high-handed woman was and sees her sliver hair, which belongs to the Isfeel family. Wendy recognizes her as the Ice Lady. She then bows her head to apologies for her discourtesy and wonders why Art was with the Isfeel family. Art tells her to stand down and that she would overlook her impudence this time, but she needed to separate herself from Art. But Wendy tells her with a glare that it was up to Art to decide. The two of them soon enter into a staring contest. Art didn't think that this would happen when he decided to come here. But Wendy gives him the bombastic side-eye, telling him that her orders are absolute. Art's mind suddenly went blank upon hearing those words and sweat began to drip more down his face. He soon realized that his words won't come out of his mouth. But Erk's voice snaps him out of his confusion. She asks him if he was feeling alright and that he shouldn't push himself. But Art tells her that it was nothing. Erk felt concerned as she heard him. Art thinks deeply about how if he went against Wendy it will rouse her temper, making trouble for Erk and her Royal Highness. Erk then yells out to Art wondering what was wrong. But Leah then asks Erk if she knew the story of Hyoko. Erk wonders why she was so calm. But Leah continues with her story, stating that after hatching the Hyoko bird deems the first individual that they see as their parent figure, they've etched in the bird's memory for its entire lifespan, and it seems that ever since Art was born, he has been serving the Roberto family, making Wendy's orders absolute. They could see that Art right now was being dominated by his fear of her, and that his brain was trying to rewrite his memories, while retaining his sense of self as he tries to return to who he was in the past. Hearing this upsets Erk. She bites hard, wondering why someone like Art, who could do almost anything and who was willing to do anything for others. Why was he willing to listen to orders from a horrible woman like Wendy? Erk's hand trembles in anger as she thinks that he was willing to be with someone who tramples over others' goodwill and for someone that will use him until he was knocking on death's door. Erk was upset as she asks Art why he had lied to him. Leah covers her face with her fan after hearing Erk. She then go over to Wendy to ask her a question. With a deadly look in her eyes, she asks Wendy where the gift of a mountain of gold she had left to Art was. Wendy was shocked at first but then tells her that she didn't know what she was talking about. But Leah warns her not to feign ignorance as she heard it all from Art before. Wendy then pushes the blame onto her father, saying that it was something he was in control of, but Wendy was firm as she tells Leah that all of Art's belongings were hers as well. Leah replies that it seems that Art himself didn't know about this. But Wendy refutes back and turns to Art, saying that he knew something about it. Art could only stare and not speak as Leah remained silent. Wendy then touches Art's shoulder and whispers to him that there was nothing to worry about and that all he needed to do was listen to her orders. Fear took over him once again as he realized that he couldn't make sense of his words. Wendy then tells him that her order now was for him to act as if he already knew. His vision blurs as he thinks about how if he went against Wendy it would cause trouble for Erk. He knew that he needed to endure this all by himself. Art looks at Erk's concerned face and took a moment before saying yes. With a dead look on his face, Art tells them that he was aware. Wendy smiles upon hearing that and tells them that they would be returning. Erk then calls out to Art asking if he remembers about the first day they met and how he helped her out with his cleaning magic, and that she made a request for him to confide in the Isfeel family regarding his wishes. But Art's face was still looking dead as Wendy tells him to hurry up. Erk continues to speak to him about how he treated her father's insomnia by making a bed, and that even today he had supported her and calmed her anxiety. She grips her fist hard and shouts out loud as Art was behind her, I want you to rely on me, Art. Life scene began to appear on Art's face as he hears her words. Wendy shouts and orders him to not listen to Erk's words anymore. But Erk continues to speak about how Art was too kind to others, and that it was okay to not take on everything alone, as she wanted him to treat himself better. Hope starts to shine in Art's eyes. As he turns to look at Erk, who tells him to face her properly one more, "It's a request, Art," she says with tears on the ground. She looks at him and tells him to stop lying to her. As Art and Erk stare at one another, he couldn't help but feel like the worst. He thinks about how he had betrayed the trust of all those kind-hearted people. He grips his chest upon realizing that he had even betrayed Erk. As Wendy tries to pull him away, he tries to reach out to her, thinking that he didn't mean to. Wendy yells at him that they were leaving and didn't need to stay with these people any longer. But Art could only think of how he was someone that could only take action upon receiving order, and that Erk had taught him about having his own free will. For someone like him who had no self-esteem, Erk had accepted him for who he was. Erk's faces were filled with tears as Art realized that all he did was disappoint her. He begins to tear up as he was torn away from Erk, that he had failed as a butler. But even then, he just didn't want to lie to Erk. Art had now freed himself from Wendy's evil clutches. "Pardon me for my rudeness, I actually did not know about the gold," Art said. Wendy was shocked to hear that. Leah was surprised while Erk was happy. Art then turns to Wendy, telling her about how he was expelled from the house and that he was no longer her butler, but Wendy was confused and asked what he was talking about. With a firm, confident look in his eyes, Art begins to tell her. But Wendy orders him not to. Ignoring her words, Art bows his head and tells her that he was Ophicle, the Isfil family's Lady Erk's butler. Wendy felt doomed upon hearing those words from Art. Erk then tells her that if she tried to make Art do anything, she will have no choice but to intervene. Wendy knew that she must retaliate, as she recalls the memory of when Art called her a nice person. But her trembles as she tells them that they must be joking. She screams at them with tears in her eyes about why she has to when Art was always her. Leah then stops her and tells her that they were not yet done with the gold situation. She gives Wendy the bombastic side-eye, telling her that it's about time for her to be punished for her impudence towards the kingdom. Right here, right now, in front of all the nobles present. Chaos ensues as everyone started to run. Some shouted that Baron Rubetto was escaping, and so was the Flamin' House too. The guards began to look for them as they couldn't have gone far. Wendy looks around in confusion before telling Art that she will remember this before running away as well. But she then trips on her own dress, causing her to yell out in pain as she falls to the ground. She notices that her dress was torn but kept quiet, making her exit out of the ball as Leah looks at her running, saying, "Oh my." Erk then rushes to hug Art once Wendy was gone. Art was surprised by Erk's action, which causes him to blush heavily. She looks at him with a beautiful radiant smile and tells him welcome back. Art could only stare and tell her that he was back. But Leah interrupts their special moment, saying that she was the one who did the most work, and that it was quite rude for Art to do that as there was no other woman like her. Erk then tells her that she was disturbing Art, but a guard then appears, informing Leah and Erk about something. Erk asks him what it was and he whispered it into her ear. Art notices that Erk's expression was grim, as she tells him that it was bad. That in Felon, towards their house were what seemed to be a large swarm of black batters approaching. A voice is speaking out as a city is set in flames. "Insufficient, insufficient, insufficient. Hunger, thirst, no matter how many times I eat, I'm never satisfied." A swarm of bugs are seen flying in the air towards the burning city. "No thanks, I'm out of here." Sorry for the delay, I had to bring back our voice artist. Back to the story. A man is seen with a coat hanging on his shoulders. He introduces himself as Peter, the guild master of the place. Art looks at him nervously, but Ramon assures him as he told him that Peter may not look much, but he could trust him. Peter then went straight into the details. He tells Art that it was around 20 years ago that the bugs started to get imported into the famine-struck kingdom. It was because of their black and hard shells that they don't die easily. On top of that, they also had a very large appetite, resulting in efficient reproduction. Art recalls from the Royal Capital books that it recounted that there was a swarm of between 100 million to a billion of them. Peter then informs him that the cities of Onyx Pearl and Garnet had already been decimated. Ramon added on that there was always a substantial amount of damage. but Peter tells them that this time it was much worse than the previous waves. As this time there was 500 billion of them. Hell no, I'm sorry guys, I am out of here once again. It's okay, I brought him back guys. Now back to the story. Urk was surprised to hear that there were 500 billion while Fry wondered why there were so many. Ramen then says they have started to appear with a serious look on his face, but Tet couldn't believe it as it shouldn't be the time for them to show up. It was the pure Queen Batter's manifestation. A glowing white bug lady was seen amongst the billions of black batters. Urk didn't know what that was, so Peter explains to her that the black ones are the common ones, and that the ones that are particularly light and huge are the pure ones. Tet then assumes that it meant they were ranked as the most dangerous ones, making it an S rank. Peter wanted to beat it first, but realized that it only takes one of it to raise an entire country to the ground. Ramon then asks how long until it arrives. Peter tells him in 1 week's time. Fry shouts out that it was too soon and that they wouldn't be able to make it after forming the extermination party, but Ramon tells him that it was not all. He points to the map of Drad, informing the others that if the bugs continue on their route, the royal capital Drad will ultimately end up getting attacked. Ramon's hinted that this was going to be the largest disaster ever since the country was founded, but Art puts up his hand, telling them that he had a suggestion. Peter tells him to hold on as this wasn't a safe place for a kid like him. But Urk reminds him that Art wasn't who he assumes him to be. Ramon then stops Peter as well and told the others to hear what Art has to say. Art then brings out a bottle with a cork. Peter recognizes it as lemon water. Art tells him that he brought some because of his sore throat, but later realizes that he could apply bug-repelling magic to it. Peter then tells him to not joke around, but one of the maids screams out that it was that thing. The head maid tells her to quiet down, but she tells her that the lemon water had made the bugs stop approaching even when she didn't use much of it. Art then tells them that if all goes well, it could buy them time for the next 2 days. Fry wonders if Art was serious, while Tet was surprised to learn that they could slow down the great disaster. Roman was impressed at the idea and that it came from the guy who made his bed. Fry and Urk praise Art for his idea because of his exceptional abilities and that he was already stronger than Art. Peter looks impressed by the idea, and he soon turns his head towards Art asking if he can do it, kiddo. Art was happy to hear those words. Ramon commented on how blunt Peter was, but Peter assures him that he couldn't help it as he didn't know any other way to ask for help. Art then calls out to Peter, bowing his head and telling him that he could leave it all to him. Ramon then informs them that he will send a message to the king so that they could gather troops, and that he will leave the rest of the work to Art. Art was happy to hear that Ramon considered him as part of the family. He recalls the happy memories of the Isfeel family, and firms his resolution in ensuring that no matter what happens he would protect the Isfeel family. Urk stares at Art and wonders how amazing it was for Art to stand up for anyone. Peter then tells them that he would collect everyone's information and would meet them at the guild in 2 days. Urk was then seen standing still in the shower as water continues to pour over her body. She thinks about how Art gives all of his powers for her sake. She thought deeply about how she had wanted him to rely on her, and that it was every she wanted. But she ended up always being the one that needed to be saved. She ponders these thoughts as the shower water continues to pour into the drain. A carriage wheel is seen speeding at a fast rate as a voice spoke out wondering if it was okay for them to sneak out without informing someone. It was Leah and her servant who were speeding away, as Leah thought about how she couldn't allow the Ice Princess to take Art away from her. "Wait until I get to you, Art," she yelled out as many carriages are seen riding fast. Thanks for watching the latest part from the voice of Manhwa. Subscribe for more content and don't forget to comment below what you want to see in the future. Like and share for more.